friends, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Central European University and the Summer University Office.
The Central European University in Hungary has been the host of a series of summer courses, such as the one about decentralization and fiscal intergovernmental relations. This one-week course saw lecturers, academics and public officials come in from over 10 countries, including a contingent from the Indonesian government, to share their knowledge and experience about decentralization in their countries.
The key word for decentralization is power to the people.
Participants and faculty members had a one-day outing at Lake Balaton. They had time to get to know each other and familiarize themselves with the concepts they would be dealing with for the next 6 days.
Centralization is when central governments wants to give problems to local government, and local government wants to refuse them.
The course is getting more and more interesting in terms of we are using more and more experiences. The people who are coming here have some life experiences in the decentralization.
It's a process of political, of financial, of administrative independence of local authorities.
What I think of decentralization is people who are living here, they take control of how you manage Lake Balaton and how you manage the tourism here and how you maintain this place. And it should not be like somebody sitting in Budapest in some office and he will tell you, hey, this is what I think about Lake Balaton.
The people who come to the course know a lot more than we know about their countries, and we're always a little bit tense. But actually I think that the fact that they know makes the course easier.
Using video conferencing to bring in world-renowned experts, the course allowed for a wide range of perspectives.
Was falling apart. The World Bank recognized the key to promoting growth and stability was to promote a knowledge base and to develop in partnership institutions throughout the world. The idea that if we could build human capital and work together, that we could in fact promote the development agenda.
Supported by the World Bank Institute, this Fiscal Decentralization course has been running since 1999 with the partnership of the Local Government and Public Service Reform Initiative of the Open Society Institute. The faculty comprised internationally renowned practitioners, academics and Budapest local government advisors, as well as senior government officials such as Peter Segvári. These people were able to provide important insights into regional and local governments, as well as to discuss key issues of decentralization. The course was based on a worldwide experience and knowledge of decentralization. A significant factor was that after 1990, a radical decentralization process began in the regions of Central Eastern Europe and also in Central Asia. The one-party system was being replaced by a multi-party democratic system where the power of the state was being shared with regional and local governments.
We used to live in a society where the central government, the state, was the most powerful.
The difference in Hungary was that Hungary had this, what I would call, soft communism period in the 80s, when there was a rather liberal climate in which people could discuss these issues. I first came to Hungary in 1988 because I was invited by Hungarians who were planning decentralization. And then, of course, 1 year later, Big Bang, Berlin Wall and all the rest of it. And you suddenly get a chance.
This one-week course focused on issues and frameworks instrumental to achieving successful decentralization, as well as a high degree of fiscal autonomy of local governments. The key issues are legal framework, issue of expenditure and revenue assignments, local revenues, intergovernmental transfers and grants, local government borrowing, creditworthiness, budgeting and financial management.
In the last 3 years we have developed a distance learning component of the course. The participants actually start learning 3-4 months before they come here to Budapest.
And we designed this distance learning module in a way that all the units need no more than 1 hour to learn. And after a module, they have to prepare a kind of assignment what they learn about these topics. And in this assignment, they have to use analytical framework and terms they learned during the module. They have to use it in their own country's experience.
The distant learning assignment, especially the course materials that were sent to us, were a kind of eye-opener, right? Such that when I came here, some of the technical terms were not strange to me at all.
Distance learning was important because people with different backgrounds needed to understand the common terms of knowledge presented in the decentralization process.
So there were some experts and there was somebody from, I don't know, from philosophy who just thinking about to deal with decentralization or something like that. So in the beginning we need some common language to make it easier to communicate with each other during the course.
The course aimed to influence policy making in the countries which are in the middle of the transformation process. Each of the key issues of decentralization were discussed in detail in lectures and demonstrated by the individual case studies of the participants. One of these central issues is the legal framework which guarantees the legitimacy of local governments.
Longer and stronger the power of, for example, Communist Party in Central or Eastern Europe was, the more difficult it is for people to abide by the law. They have taken this habit to do things next to the law. Albania has been an extremely difficult country because there is no tradition of abiding to the law.
First of all, the principle which we call the rule of law principle. What is it? In a liberal democratic state, the rule of law principles say whatever is written in the law has to be respected by all the people working in the public sector.
The rule of law principle can only be applied if the competence of local governments are clearly defined in the Constitution. In the absence of this framework, the central government can reduce and somewhat threaten the autonomy of local and regional governments. Some of the participants were able to come up with their own case studies on this issue.
In the Constitution, we are stressing the importance of local and regional governments. Their competencies are very briefly elaborated also in the Constitution. Decision on which services should be provided by which size of government, local government, is not specified at all. So basically all local governments are providing all local services without difference of size, organizational structure, number of administration and so on.
Nigerian fiscal relations is highly dependent on oil revenues, which is volatile in that it depends on fluctuations in the world oil market. If we are to follow strictly what the Constitution recommends, there may be a problem in the fiscal arrangement because the revenues for the management of the competencies that have been assigned to the various layers of government. Besides that, by the very nature of military regimes, the Constitution does not operate.
Every time we have a military government which overthrows a political government, that military government comes up with a new local government system. The recent one was in 1999, the military government again overthrew the political government and came up with a new system, calling it a devolution plan.
The 20 officials from the Indonesian government had the opportunity to consult separately with the faculty members regarding the particular problems that they are facing in Indonesia.
We need more precise or adequate legal framework to set everything in the proper of the process of decentralization. After 3 years running with the decentralization, Indonesia experiencing lack of legislation and proper arrangement of legal framework. So many disputes arise, even for allocation, grants between local government and central government. If we go to your paper, the process of the use of legislation doesn't work in Indonesia. But I realize it's a difficult situation.
It is worth noting that one of the faculty members with the Indonesian contingent was Ken Davey, who has been an advisor to the Indonesian government for over 20 years.
And there were strong parallels between the transitional experience in Eastern Europe and the transitional experience in Indonesia, because although one previous system was communist and the other wasn't communist, they were both dictatorial systems and they were both had many parallels, not just in terms of autocracy, but also the actual institutions, the way in which central government penetrated and controlled local government.
In between lectures and presentations, the faculty often met to reflect on the ideas discussed in the course and share opinions about possible improvements.
It is very, very interesting that we are doing this course in the fourth year or something, and how it's changing. So in the first year, the basic thing was that they explain what are the main theories, main ideas, main definition. And now we are in the stage when they are using these terms and theories, and I can gradually be able to understand the whole system and have a more critical or deep view of the things.
In order to achieve fiscal independence, substantial influence needs to be given to local governments to run public services and so to produce their own local revenues. In the past, local governments were not given permission by the central government to impose taxation, but since the political changes, local taxes have become an instrumental part in the revenue of local governments.
In the East European countries, actually, the tendency is stronger to use the personal income tax as a source for local government funding. So Estonia, Lithuania, Romania and Slovenia are very close to 80%. So 80% of the local revenues come from the personal income tax.
The only tax which really raises enough money, which can be local and raises enough money to finance a large range of services, is basically the personal income tax.
As part of the local tax issue covered in the course, a computer simulation session was conducted based on a computer model of a small Hungarian town. The participants had the opportunity to put themselves in the shoes of policymakers who make a policy statement and then try to apply it in a concrete case of establishing a property tax. The computer model allows them to see what the impact on the community would be of the decisions and policies they make.
As everybody probably knows, rich people have their own interest, and sometimes the interest are not going in the line with the interest of the whole society.
According to our model, the poor people pay $7, and according to your model, you pay only $8.
Right. Lump sum taxation doesn't mean that everyone will have to pay $124. It means that $124 is a maximum. And there is a limitation. You cannot pay more than 7% of your annual income. Limitation is there.
In this course, I want to learn about how do they implement about the local taxation in their country. Let's say a theory, it's not absolutely we can implement directly. We have to see, especially in Indonesia, we have different culture, different political issues. We have to see and then adjust the situation.
We cannot give this general competence to local government, but local government should be assigned with a few functions which can be financed by their own taxes.
I'm not saying that you should leave it to local government to collect taxes and spend it and let's see what happens. But the way it is designed now, it puts much too much burden on central government, and especially on the finance ministry.
Throughout the course, people also had the opportunity to socialise and discuss issues other than decentralisation. In most countries, a significant part of local government's revenue comes in the form of transfers from the central government. In the transfer system, incentives have a defining role because they can motivate or discourage certain activities and actions of local governments.
One of the resources for the local government are the grants. Grant structure defines how efficient local government will behave through the incentives. It's very important to give an incentive for the local government to provide the services at the normal and acceptable level, but at the same time save and economize with the expenditures to give room for other very important tasks.
Local governments need to have good financial management, not only because they have to account for the basic services they are providing in the areas of social welfare, healthcare and education, but also because they must have savings for long-term plans and future investments.
Local financial management is, again, very important element of decentralization, because it doesn't matter how efficient system you have at the national level between the local governments and the national government, if inside the local government financial processes is not in place.
As the host city of this decentralization course, Budapest provides an excellent example for the financial management of local governments.
In 1990, in Hungary, a very strongly decentralized system was created, local government system. Local governments are speaking about different strategies sometimes when they are speaking about finances. I really have to tell you that for us there were three crucial issues. One, we wanted to efficiently spend the money.
Budgeting is a kind of new thing in the region because before the transition we have very short papers describing the main items, main expenditure and revenue items in local government, and doesn't give any details how local government is using public money for their own people.
In Budapest, we introduced a system where there is a 7 years forecast of revenues and a 7 years forecast of the changes in the expenditure proportions. This means that all tendencies which are forecasted are really tested in a longer-term model.
It is the locally elected legislative and executive body that control the financial management of local governments. Therefore, giving citizens the right to directly elect their representatives in the local council, as well as allowing the council to appoint the local administration, is the key to an accountable and effective local government system. This was done relatively quickly in Hungary, the Czech Republic and Poland, whereas in countries like Georgia and Albania it is still a very slow process, with the possibility of inadequate decisions and corruption occurring.
The big issue was how you can force local government to be more accountable for their operation. In the beginning, these mayors thought that the income of the local government is basically the same as their own private income. So they thought about it like, I was successful to get some money for the central government, so it's my job to spend it successful way.
I would say in a very decentralized system, corruption, maybe not immediately, but in the long run, or in 5-10 years, should have a tendency to decrease, because it will be very hard for local elected representative, local civil servant to pretend that they've taken decision for a good reason while they're being corrupt. It will show.
There's another point I wanted to make here.
Okay. Yes,
that you are
An integral part of the course were the group assignments where participants were given the task of analysing the existing mechanism of expenditure and revenue assignment, transfers and other related issues using an example of a country in the group. The challenge was to come up with a defined decentralisation strategy that would provide a solution for the particular problem.
We have to explain the system, describe the problem based on facts and data which we have, and we do it based on one country. And then around this we will give our other countries' experiences which will contribute to, these recommendations will contribute to the possible actions which can be taken in order to solve this problem.
My suggestion is that we have 3 unitary and 2 federal. So we take unitary government, take one of the countries, say Poland. So let's take Poland or Croatia or Albania.
Downloaded the law on primary education in Croatia. I have the formula which was used in the first phase of decentralization, and I have a study on how the first year of decentralization looked like in Croatia.
Regional government can borrow directly from external sources.
By empowering local government to set up tax base and tax rates, it is better to...
In the last 2 days of the course, all the groups presented their own decentralization case studies, along with recommendations for the solution of the problems. Feedback to these lectures was given by the faculty, as well as by fellow participants.
We identified decentralization of primary education and then selected Croatia as a case study. Mariana will talk about the situation in Croatia, and we will all chip in with regard to our country, and then we will wrap it up.
In 2001, the central government decided that it will be entering the process of decentralizing the three core functions, and that was in social care, education and health. So they selected 32 cities which showed sufficient fiscal capacity that they could start with a new function, and created at the same time a fiscal equalization fund. All local governments have the right to impose a surcharge on personal income tax.
The education institutions are being transferred to local governments after 1995 constitutional amendment. But the 40% of funds have been given only in 97-98.
By law, primary education is defined as a shared function between central government and local government. And the new sectoral law should define the division of power, of responsibility between these two levels of government. And up to now, this law is still missing.
The local governments, they were again imposed certain ceilings where they could not spend beyond certain amount of money, and everything had to go upwards to either the provincial government or the federal government for expenditures. Almost all of the schools in the rural areas, and rural area comprise of 70% of our country, are run by the government.
In order to enable these local governments to do better accounting, to better plan, to know what kind of program they want to provide, training should be provided to these local governments. As you can see, it was an extremely difficult task to discuss one very, very important issue for all local governments throughout the world.
So let me give the word to Adrian, who is much better to pronouncing the names and give you the certificate.
Mariusz Sienkiewicz.
Decentralization means that not just the rules and the legal regulation has to be changed, but the behavior of the norms and the attitude of the institution, peoples and organization has to be changed. And this is why it's very important to use the Western experiences, but at the same time to build up a body of knowledge based on the Eastern European experiences as well, to give a more efficient advice for the government who move in this direction.
I'm amazed at the level of similarity in some of the tangible cases, problems as regards the allocation of revenue and expenditure that exists in all countries of the world. What I'll do is get back to that organization, to the relevant persons, to give them a kind of briefing on what I gained from this course.
On the second page. It was very useful for me to meet governmental officials and university researchers from other countries to see that they're working on similar topics. Some of the group discussions that we did here, especially we had on local taxation with Adrian UNESCO, was very useful for me.
We have anecdotal evidence from former participants that they are using our course and our materials in their universities.
We need lots of specialists who can deal with local government finance problem. This course will help in future to improve the quality of human resource in this field.
If you want a simple solution, don't try decentralization. But this is the beauty of it. You know, if you want a simple solution, don't try marriage, don't try to have kids, don't try education. The more you learn, the more complicated the world becomes, and so on. So basically, yes, decentralization is complicated, but not for the fun of it, but because life is complicated.